Welcome to a journey of transformation. Every week, we explore new horizons, pushing boundaries and embracing what's next. This isn't just about technology, it's about evolving ourselves. Think of it as your weekly reset, a chance to upgrade your mindset, your skills, and your potential. We're here to help you rethink how you approach challenges, how you innovate, and ultimately, how you succeed. From powerful insights to practical strategies and game-changing knowledge, we tap into everything you need. It's about staying ahead, not just in a digital world, but in life itself, equipping you for every new beginning. Because in this fast-paced era, standing still is simply not an option. Growth is continuous. You either choose to evolve, to adapt, and to learn, or you risk being left behind. Embrace the change. This isn't just an update. It's a profound rebirth, a chance to redefine your future, to step into your power, and to truly thrive. It's about unlocking your next level. Join us on this exciting path. Embrace your new beginning. Your journey starts now.
Welcome. Welcome to Tech Tuesdays. Tech Tuesdays of the Final Boss Podcast, episode number 218. I have the Sensei with me right now. Say hello to the Sensei, everyone. Sensei, can you hear us?
Oh, I hear you just fine.
Okay, perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize. A few things were happening. Technical difficulties. Just had a family emergency. But we're here, right? We are here, and I am here. We are here. Life happens, and when it does, you keep rolling.
We adapt and move on.
Adapt and move on. So we are here for you for the next hour of this conversation on this podcast of the Final Boss Podcast. And we got some great information for you that which is interesting, because what happened the other day, no one's talking about it, but we're going to talk about it. So before we get right into it, let's do the great front matter stuff, right? Front matter stuff is the normalcy, right? This is for entertainment purposes only. And to each and every last single one of you, no matter where you're watching and viewing us from, or for your listening pleasures, whether it's on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, Kick, Instagram, Spotify, or Facebook. Like I said earlier, we are here. I am here. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night to each and every last single one of you. This is the Final Boss Podcast, and we are ready to get into it. We are in season 4, the Rebirth, Arc 3, episode number 218, people, episode 218. We're going to be talking about, is AGI here, right? Is AGI here, or is it? We're going to be talking about who gets to decide and why their answer changes everything. I am the Final Boss, and across from me is the Sensei. And for those who are just now joining us, thank you. For those who are always here, thank you, Molly. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for joining us tonight for this great conversation. Listen. Let me get my magic wand. Listen. 3 weeks ago, the CEO of the most powerful chip company on the planet sat on a podcast and said 4 words that detonated across every newsroom, boardroom, and research lab on Earth, right? He said, I think we've achieved AGI. This is from Jensen Huang of NVIDIA, right? And that happened on March 22nd. The clip spread in hours. Researchers fired back. Satya Nadella said no. Sam Altman said basically yes, then called it spiritual. Interesting. Google DeepMind published a paper redefining the whole thing, and nobody stopped to ask the most important question: who gets to decide? Because that is not science. That's not science. That's not science fiction. That's not a science question. That is a power question. And the final boss community needs to understand the difference between or before the definition gets decided for them. And tonight we're going to be talking about it, right? We're going to break it all down. And I have our tech SME. For those who don't know what SME is, he's our subject matter expert. The Sensei here, of course. This is Tech Tuesday. So, of course, he's here. So, let's get into it, man. Now, look. Listen. We've been waiting to get into this conversation, right? We've been waiting to get into this conversation. We talk about AGI a lot. We talked about AGI, ASI, and
AGI.
Yeah,
Distributed.
AGI, ASI. We've talked about ASI. We talked about distributive AI as well. And to all the community, all four of you, smarts, final bosses, motivators, and our warriors, right? Tonight is built for all of you, right? It's built for all of you. And here's what happened. We discussed it, right? We've been discussing it. And the CEO of NVIDIA, one of the most powerful companies in the history of this industry, sat down with Lex Fridman and said it plainly. We have achieved AGI, 4 words. That's all it took. The internet caught the inside of ours, right? But here's what most people missed in that noise. The definition Huang used to make the declaration was not the standard definition. It was not even close. And the moment you understand what definition he actually used, everything about that statement changes. That is what tonight's about. Not the headline, the story underneath the headline. Sensei, we've been sitting on this one, so let's get into it.
So, look, let's take the roof off of this thing. I'm telling you, because this is a big deal. This is the playing field moving. This is the goalpost shifting. This is where things actually start to get real, because the timeline that we had been anticipating was going to happen has suddenly completely changed and been thrown on its face. So this is big stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely, man. And let's set the scene for the people, right? Let's set the scene with precision, because that's what we do. Because the setup and the roof that you just mentioned is everything. Lex Fridman offered Jensen Huang a specific metric for AGI on the podcast, number 494. Wow, that's incredible. Could AI start and grow a technology business to the point where it's worth billions of dollars? Fridman asked if Huang thought AGI, by that definition, could be achieved within the next 5 to 20 years. Huang said he did not think about the amount of time that was necessary. I think it's now. I think we achieved AGI. Stop right there, full stop. Before the researcher reaction, before Nadella weighs in, before any of the pushback, just hold that what actually happened in that moment. The most powerful hardware CEO on earth was handed someone else's definition of the most important word in artificial intelligence. He did not bring his own benchmark. He did not push back on the framing. He accepted a framing inside that borrowed definition, said, we are already there. Sensei, what do you see when you watch that exchange?
Well, I mean, what this means technically is that Huang made a claim about the state of AI capability. And here's the thing, without being measured against actual cognitive standards, because that's the benchmark, right? The conversation defined the finish line as business valuation. That's the conversation, not intelligence. A billion-dollar company has nothing to do with cross-domain reasoning. It has nothing to do with novel problem solving. It has nothing to do with understanding. It's a revenue event. Huang declared the scientific milestone using a financial metric. It's not the same unit of measurement. It's actually what's more realistic to how we approach the world versus raw thinking power. It's actual real capability.
Mm.
The whole
Wow.
different metric.
Whole different metric. And then immediately after declaring it, it achieved, he undermined himself in the same breath. Huang told Fridman directly, you said 1 billion and you did not say forever. So his version of AGI only has to last so long as the revenue does. A vital app that makes $1 billion briefly and disappears qualifies. Let that land before we go any further. And before we go any further, let's talk about the brass tacks, right? Let's talk about the brass tacks. Let's get into it. Tonight's brass tacks quote comes from Francis Bacon, written in 1597. And it's a short one. This is probably the shortest brass tacks we've had on this show. And here it is. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. That's it. Full stop. Knowledge is power. And Bacon did not say knowledge is information. He said knowledge is power. Power over outcomes, power over decisions, power over what gets built and what's beneath it, right? The AGI debate is not a knowledge debate. It is a power debate. Whoever controls the definition of AGI controls what happens next, right? The regulatory frameworks, the investment flows, the public narrative, the
Repeat that. Repeat that. Whoever controls the definition of AGI controls what happens next. The definition. Yes. That's the full stop right there. That says, whoa, full stop.
Yep.
Who controls the definition controls what happens next.
Whoever controls it, right? Whoever defines the milestone owns the moment. That is what Bacon was pointing out in 1597. That is exactly what Jensen Huang demonstrated on March 22nd. The man who sells the chips got to call the finish line. And in the 24 hours after that podcast dropped, not one major outlet stopped to ask whether the finish line he called was legitimate or convenient. Knowledge is power. Tonight, we put that knowledge directly in your hands. Sensei, for the community, give us the ARC 3 context. Where has the season of Tech Tuesdays been building toward tonight?
So the ARC 3 of Tech Tuesday Season 4, we've been tracking the convergence of intelligence, hardware, and decision-making. Those are 3 different components that need to come together to make actual progress. And we've been watching this infrastructure build out in real time. The chip wars, we talked about the memory, how the manufacturers aren't creating consumer memory anymore. It's all memory for data centers. The data center arms race, okay? Data centers are popping up like popcorn, like everywhere.
Correct.
There's one that's trying to build 2 blocks from my house.
Wow.
235-acre data center. And tonight is where the narrative crystallizes, because what Jensen Huang did on that podcast is not separate from the hardware story. It is the hardware story. The man who sells the compute just told the world the destination has arrived. And it's not a neutral observation. It's a market move.
That's interesting. Right? That's interesting. And here's where this story gets genuinely dangerous for anyone who is not paying close attention. Right? There's no single definition of AGI. There's never been a single definition. Every major player in this space has their own version, and every version serves their own interests. That's not by accident. That, my friends, is architecture. OpenAI's founding charter defines AGI as highly autonomous systems that outperform humans at the most economically valuable work. That sounds rigorous on the surface until you learn what private version says, right? The private definition buried inside the OpenAI and Microsoft partnership agreement that is tied to $100 billion in annual profits. The public definition is philosophical. The private definition is a contract trigger worth billions. Those are not the same thing. And the gap between them is where the real story lives. Sensei, tell us more about that.
Well, here's the thing. It comes down to when you ask, can it create $1 billion company? What did I just say? That says Microsoft, you're on notice. We're going to achieve that goal way faster and not be bound by that contract anymore. That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. That's a shot across the bow if I've ever heard one. That totally is going to change the entire landscape. Look, for the smarts in the building, here's what this means in practice. OpenAI has to be careful about what they declare. What is AGI? Because declaring it too early is going to detonate this contractual bomb. And what's a contractual bomb? Microsoft and OpenAI have a partner. They partnered, and Microsoft has invested over $13 billion. And that partnership has rights attached to it. So the AGI declaration is changing those rights. So when Altman makes a statement, when it reached the CEO of Microsoft,
right,
not to Nadella offered a reality check. And here's what he had. He had to say this. He had no choice. He had to say this. I don't think we're anywhere close to AGI. We have a good process in place. It's not about Sam or me declaring it. He's doing that to protect that $13 billion investment. That's the only reason he said that. It doesn't matter if the goalpost has moved and we've gotten there.
Right.
It matters that he has to protect that investment, because if it reaches the contractual obligation too soon, Microsoft's out all that money and don't have anything to show for it. So this is a big, big deal. This is money. This is not little money. This is big money and how it moves.
Big, big, big money. And then after that, the DeepMind responded, right, with the most scientifically grounded framework anyone has offered in this debate. Google DeepMind published a research paper identifying 10 key cognitive faculties, including perception, reasoning, memory, learning, attention, and social cognition. And that's an actual requirement for general intelligence. 10 dimensions tested against human performance across the board. Not $1 billion company, not a vital app. 10 cognitive dimensions measured rigorously. Nobody is using the definition in a press release because it's significantly harder to claim victory on that, right? Or victory against it. And that tells you everything about whose definitions are actually driving this conversation right now. Listen. Sensei, let's follow the chips.
Yeah. I mean, this is a segment of the Final Boss that you need to hear in full, okay? Let's talk about the business angle, because it's the clearest part of the story.
Right.
When NVIDIA's CEO made that statement during that Monday episode on Lex Fridman's podcast, the clips spread in hours. 4 words from the man whose chips power roughly 80% of AI training worldwide. It landed like a detonation in the industry.
Right.
Okay. 80%. He's not a casual observer. He's an infrastructure provider. And when an infrastructure provider declares that the destination has arrived, that's not science reporting. This is sales. Yeah. By declaring AGI is achieved, Huang conveniently reinforced the necessity of his own products, because if AGI is achieved, the demand for the NVIDIA's high-end chips becomes a critical requirement for big tech companies as they scale up their data centers to meet those AI needs. So this is, I mean, money upon money upon money, layer upon layer upon layer. You're talking 3D chess here. We're not talking checkers. We're playing 3D chess at this point.
Yep, we sure are, at scale. And that's not conspiracy, ladies and gentlemen. To my smarts, fighter bosses, warriors, and motivators, I hope you guys are paying attention to exactly what we're conveying to you right now. This is huge, right? That is incentive alignment, operating exactly the way incentive alignment always operates. Hung sees the board and makes the move that serves NVIDIA's position. Just like the sensei said, we're playing chess over here. That is not what gear CEOs or great CEOs do. The final boss recognition that move and respects it while not being controlled by it, right? And here's the sentence that captures the situation completely. The commercial definition in winning because it has distribution. Academic researchers at DeepMind can publish papers arguing AGI requires cross-domain autonomous learning. And nobody changes that, right? Nobody changes that in their procurement plan. When Jensen Huang says it's here on Lex Fridman's enterprise, CIOs start updating slide decks, right? That declaration was not built for researchers. It was built for the budget approval holders. Follow the chips, follow the money.
And here's a technical contradiction that Hong himself created. In the same conversation where he declared AGI is achieved, he said this about whether AI could replicate what he built at NVIDIA. Okay? The odds of 100,000 of these agents building NVIDIA is 0%. You can't declare AGI achieved and in the same breath admit that AI cannot replicate your own company. Those two statements are incompatible. Nobody pushed back at that on real time, but we're pushing back on it right now.
Absolutely, Sensei. Absolutely. You know, let's pivot for a second before we continue. Let's talk about chips and money a little bit deeper, right? Chips and money. You know, this conversation reminds me of a conversation we recently had on this show, but we didn't talk about chips and money then. We were talking about agentic AGI or agentic AI, right? And we were talking about who gets it first.
Right. Who is in the driver's seat?
Who is in the driver's seat, right? Hong's declaration puts the money on the table.
Oh, right there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, this is because it's like they're talking about, okay, it's here. You better be spending money to buy it. Because if you don't spend money to buy it, everybody else is going to have it, and you're not. And also, it's going to be that not only do you have to spend money to get it, but if you don't, everybody else is going to have it, and it's going to be a scarce item. So therefore, with scarcity and demand, he's saying and marking that the prices are going to go up. Absolutely. Which of course is follow the money.
Follow the money. So, and you know, Sensei, I have to say this, man. I'm seeing a pattern here. I'm seeing a pattern when the voice becomes loud in the media, money flows.
Oh boy.
A few weeks ago, the same thing happened to Claude when Claude had that dispute, and then all of a sudden there was a release of some of Claude's framework, and then now all you hear is Claude. Claude.
Yeah, imagine that.
Imagine that. The pattern. The patterns. Pay attention to the patterns. All right.
Things are not what they seem like is the problem.
Absolutely.
You got to look past the surface level, because the surface level doesn't tell you what's really going on. The surface level is just that. It's just a distraction.
Just the distraction, people.
You got to think beyond the distraction.
Yeah. And that's with all things, especially in this media today. With all things, people. Look past the distractions. See what's really happening in your world by going even deeper. Looking at things in 360 degrees, top and bottom, right? Top and bottom. Now, thank you for that. And
also remember, 360 degrees is two-dimensional. If you really want to look at this stuff, we're not in a two-dimensional world anymore.
True.
So you can't even think 360 degrees. You now have to think spherical.
4D.
You have to think three dimensions. And then if you want to include time, you can think about 4 dimensions. But 3 dimensions, you have to think at that level now. And it's the
Absolutely.
difference between a flat piece of paper and a ball.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely, people. So, and Sensei, thank you again, sir. Listen, Jensen Huang is not running this play alone. So don't think that he is. Sam Altman ran the identical play weeks earlier, and examining both sides, you have to look at it from side by side. The reveals, the patterns, right? Every person in this community needs to be able to recognize and be able to name it, right? In a Forbes interview in February 2026, Altman stated directly, "We basically have built AGI or very close to it."
And what was the
Days
date?
later,
What was the date? What was that date?
February, a month earlier.
A month
Yeah,
earlier.
a month earlier.
Watch that. Watch that.
Yeah, yeah. Pay attention to that. And days later, he walked it back. And he stated, "I meant that as a spiritual statement, not a literal one." That's interesting.
The
Achieving
hell does that mean?
AGI, he's yeah, listen, we're going to get into it. We are going to get into it. Achieving AGI, he said, would require a lot of medium-sized breakthroughs. A spiritual statement, he said. That is specific language that he chose to say after that first statement. The CEO of OpenAI declared AGI basically achieved in one of the most widely read business publications on earth, then called it spiritual. When the heat from the research community and from Nadella came back on him. Sensei, let's talk about that.
Yeah, $13 billion came back on him. That's what happened. He got a little bit of backlash. He got a little backlash, okay? $13 billion backlash. Look, what happened here is a technical translation of what Altman is doing. He's managing two audiences simultaneously, okay? The investment community is going to hear we basically have the AGI and maintains confidence in a $730 billion valuation. Hear that. $730 billion valuation. The research community has to hear something else. They have to hear spiritual, not literal, and it does not crucify him for overclaiming because it's spiritual, not literal. He's walking a razor's edge because of the contractual stakes are enormous. There's so much money at stake. Whatever you say is going to have impact. The problem is, I personally think it slipped out. I think the truth slipped out, and then he had to backwalk it because, right?
Right.
I mean, he has to walk the tightrope between two completely opposite incentives. He needs the concept of AGI to be close enough to make investors believe the big bet is worth it. And at the same time, he needs to be far enough away to not accidentally trigger the landmines in the contract.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the reason that needle is precise on what the Sensei just spoke of is because of what sits inside the contract architecture beneath all of it, right? Follow the money, right? Altman has to walk a tightrope between two completely opposite incentives at the same time, right? He needs AGI to feed close enough that investors believe the bet is worth it. Like dingling.
Well, if it's not worth it, they're going to pull out.
Right. Like dangling a fish on a string, right? He needs to stay far enough away from it, as the Sensei also just stated, that he does not accidentally trigger the contractual clause that could restructure the entire Microsoft relationship. The real AGI timeline is not being driven by what the technology can actually do. It is being driven by when the declaration becomes commercially safe to make. And my warriors in the community understand and recognize this. That as a strategic position, not deception, but strategy. Know the difference. So, Sensei, what are the researchers actually saying?
Well, I mean, the researchers, the old structure, humans at the ceiling, everything existed below the capacity, right?
Right.
And so the critics right now are saying, hey, it's a different question than what you got being asked. You know, you can argue against cross-domain autonomous learning, and nobody challenges that procurement plan. But what happens is it really here? Well, it depends on who you're talking to. Who are
Right.
you talking to? So, I mean, it's a moving target. Did you know that right now in India, factory workers are wearing cameras on their head to
Mm.
capture the processes they do during their work so that it can train AI and robots to replace them?
Wow.
That's happening right now.
Mm.
So the training models are now moving away from the lab and it's moving into the real world where it really matters. So all those repetitive tasks these factory workers do are already being mapped.
Wow. Mapping
So,
is
I
key.
mean, it's not what the question is AGI here.
Right.
The question is, who are you becoming while the debate plays out around you? Because it's a debate. And they're going to
Hmm.
argue both sides because of why, because of what position they have to hold. They have no choice. You can't
Right.
say that there's a comet coming and it's going to hit the globe in 2 days. What do you get?
Right.
Panic.
Panic.
So these
Crash.
guys, they
Absolutely.
can't, right. So even if it's coming, even if it's reality, even if it's true, you can't let that get out. You got to keep it a secret because the
Or
people who
even if
wait
it's
for
here.
certain, right, or because the
Yeah.
people who wait for certainty before they move get left at the station. And
Hmm.
look, the final boss positions during that ambiguity. This is what we do. This is our advantage. Our advantage is we see the we see the evidence and we see what's going on and we see on the table goes, hey, you know what? Boy, there's a lot of pieces of that puzzle that have already come together. And
Right.
we called this out when we talked about distributed AGI and what was going to happen and how fast it was going to change. And then we talked about Moltbook and how that's
Hmm.
changing the entire landscape. Nobody talked about how that matters and how much of a big deal that is because now instead of one AGI or one system
Yeah.
developing, you now
Yeah.
have millions.
Hmm.
So now that's distribution at scale in a way that
Right.
we could never have imagined. We've let that cat out of the bag and smacked him on the ass and said go. And we don't even know what the hell go means. It's pretty wild what's going on right now, and it's happening faster than you can imagine. And when the big boys slip that it's already here, you better believe it's already here. You know, I mean, we have our advantage, right? The real technical picture. That's what we're all about here, is the real technical picture. I mean, let's give the community exactly what they deserve, the honest picture, right? Academic definitions of AGI, they require human level performance, and here it comes, across all cognitive tasks. And those include novel physical reasoning, sustained strategy over months, genuine understanding built through experience. And the current AI systems still hallucinate facts at scale. Hallucinating means if they don't know, they make it up. And they can't even navigate an unfamiliar kitchen, reason through a situation they've never encountered, or sustain a complex institution over decades. Passing the bar exam is not the same as being a general intelligence. The models that exist right now, they're generally impressive. They're pretty smart. And they score in the 99th percentile of the PhD level knowledge benchmarks. And they write code that works, and they produce analysis that's often superior and better than junior analysts. And they synthesize information at a speed no human can match. But they're not actual AGI by any rigorous cognitive definition. And let me go into to define that. The DeepMind cognitive taxonomy identifies the 10 facilities, the 10 faculties: perception, reasoning, memory, learning, attention, social cognition, and four others. The current AI is extraordinary at certain slices of that list, but it doesn't cover all 10 at the human level. I mean, it's not even close. especially in the categories that require genuine experience-based learning in novel physical and social environments. So, I mean, here's the verdict. The technology is real and it's advancing fast. The AGI declaration from Hong was a commercial move, not a scientific finding. I mean, the gap between that, what exists, and what most researchers call true AGI, it's significant. And the debate about that definition, it's more important than the debate about the capability because whoever wins that definition debate controls what happens next. And that's the technical truth. That's the reality. It's like the definition matters. And once we have that definition, we then can move on, but not until we have that definition. And then it comes now down to the jobs question that nobody's asking. Nobody's asking that right.
Yeah. It's real bad here. So we just lost connectivity, but I'm back. And yeah, the definitions, right? And here's an honest technical verdict, right? The models that exist right now are genuinely extraordinary. They truly are. They do the things that would have seemed impossible 5 years ago. They produce analysis that outperforms junior professionals in speed that often often in quality as well. They synthesize information at a pace no human can match. And they are not AGI by any rigorous cognitive definition. Both of those statements are simultaneously true. The technology is real and impressive and economically disruptive.
Yeah, it's making a mess of things.
Yeah, it is making a mess of things, right? And the gap between what exists today and what researchers define as the true general intelligence remains significant. Hold both without collapsing one on top of the other. Sensei, thank you for holding it down.
Look, the Warriors, we understand this instinctively, right? You don't wait for someone to formally declare the battle started. I mean, we're reading the terrain. We already know. We were already reading the terrain before they even said these things. We are already saying it is here. It's closer than you imagine. And here it comes. After we said that, boom. Oh, hey, guess what? Here it is. I mean, the terrain has already changed. The question is whether you adjusted your position before or after your position got taken. That's what comes down to. Did you make your moves? Are you making your moves? Are you prepared for what's already here? Don't think because you see it in the news that it's current. By the time you see it in the news, it's already old news. It's already stale.
Already stale. Yep, absolutely. And before we continue, I want to pivot for a second because I have to, this is Rebirth, and I have to talk about it, right? Every episode this season runs through this lens. It's not a theme dropped in branding. It's a structural filter that everything gets examined through. And this story tonight is no different, right? The rebirth is about what rises after the old structure dies. Season 3 was the reckoning. We faced what was built and could not be undone. Season 4 is the question, what do you become? And the other side of that reckoning. The old structure that is dying right now was built on one foundational assumption. Humans were the cognitive ceiling, since they stated that earlier. Everything AI could do existed below human intelligence. The entire economic architecture of the last 50 years rested on that one principle. Human cognition was the scarcest, most valuable resource in the labor market, right? That assumption is being declared dead right now, in this instant, today. Not a scientist with a peer-reviewed paper, right? But the man who sells the chips on a podcast with millions of listeners. And the enterprise world is responding to that declaration regardless of whether the scientific community agrees with it.
It's nuts. It's happening so fast.
Yeah.
There's so much that's already happened that it's just it's not even. I mean, I'm almost at a loss for words because it's so impactful on a level that we have yet to even begin to understand. I mean, it's just that powerful.
It is. It truly is. When you scale it up, scale down, when you look at it, it is. Yep.
Hmm.
And people, the rebirth is not waiting for permission to begin. Every enterprise CIO updating their slide deck based on Hong's declaration is data point telling you the narrative is already moving. The investment flows are already moving. The workforce discussions, decisions are already being made. Open your eyes, people. Open your eyes, right? Clear eyes, man. Clear eyes. And watch what happens to you. Those are the only two options on the table right now, right? Only two options. Now, mm,
I mean, look, there's not a debate about this. It's just not. It's
no.
Look, the reason they can make that declaration with a straight face is not because of a definition. It's because what they're shipping. It's the architecture, the rack scale design, and systems that integrate the GPU, CPU, the memory. All of that
The
is
frameworks. Yeah.
design. It didn't exist 3 years
Mm-hmm.
ago. Wasn't even there.
Yeah.
The compute available to train and run AI models has increased by orders of magnitude in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So the gap between what's theoretically possible and what's practically achievable has collapsed because the hardware closed that gap. And
Mm-hmm.
just think, we're just beginning to see the beginning of that, how fast that's changing. So when they say we're here, he's pointing to his own product roadmap. The models that will run on the infrastructure being built and deployed right now will be significantly more capable than what exists today. And we talked about this when we talked about Cisco
Yeah.
building hybrid quantum systems, didn't we? Build
Yep.
the infrastructure. Once you're the one with the infrastructure, everybody has to follow your infrastructure because it's already
Mm-hmm.
there. He's announcing a destination by pointing at the highway he built to get there. And guess who did the same thing? Cisco did the same thing. So
Right.
this is not like this is something new and revolutionary.
Mm-hmm.
No, he's not saying, well, we're the ones. He's just
Right.
saying the whole thing is there.
Yeah.
And it requires not just his piece of the puzzle, but the other pieces of the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
So what he's saying is an architectural shift. The intelligence does not live in one machine anymore. It lives in a network in this system, interconnection of thousands of chips working in
Yeah.
concert in those quantum networks that are being built to go across our fiber optic connections that are getting installed everywhere as we speak.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? here's something that nobody's talking. Well, everyone's afraid of, but nobody's really having the open discussion, right? Let's talk about the jobs, right? Let's address that question so that everyone in the community that cares understands that we're going to say it out loud, right? What does this mean for the work that you do right now? And I'm going to tell you, here's a straight answer, right? Here's a straight answer. The AGI label does not change the math on your career. What changed the math is capability, not classification. A model that can do 80% of what a junior analyst does create economic disruption, whether or not Jensen Huang called it general intelligence. A system that writes, debugs, tests, and documents code reshapes the software workforce, whether or not it passes DeepMind's 10 faculty benchmark. The label for investors and contract lawyers, the capability is for you. And the capability is already in the market right now, changing decisions that affect real people.
It's already here. And we keep saying that. It's
Yeah.
already here. If you're not being involved in learning and following the steps to get ahead of this game, you're going to be one left behind.
Yep.
You have to become a designer and user and creator instead of just an end user. An end
Yeah.
user is going to be replaced.
Yep.
And they're happening. We've talked about that when we talked about the jobs market, when we talked about that entire session on that.
Yeah.
What jobs are going to be replaced and why?
Mm-hmm.
And that, you think that was a goalpost? No, that goalpost itself is moving. That entire goalpost is moving, and it's moving at a very rapid pace.
Right.
And we said that when manufacturing jobs are going to come back to the United States, that sounds great on the surface, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think those manufacturing jobs are going to be human run, or they're going to be automated?
You're definitely going to be automated. So
Okay.
yeah.
And so
Yep.
the infrastructure that's built to make that happen is here.
Mm-hmm.
And a machine doesn't have to be smarter than a human to take its job. It just has to be smart enough to do that job. And that's the big difference. People think, oh, AGI is going to take over all of our jobs. No, it doesn't even have to be that smart. It
Yeah.
only has to be smart enough to do that repetitive job
Mm-hmm.
that you're being paid to do right now. And as long as it's good enough to do that, your job is gone.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of it.
That's the reality.
Look, how many times nowadays when you call in for anything, you do a chat with a company to get support, you call in on a phone to get support, you're already being routed through AI because it is already dealing with those calls. I mean, think about it. You're the person who sat there as a receptionist, picking up the phone and routing phone calls. That's
Mm-hmm.
gone. Those jobs are gone. And it's the entry level jobs that get you through work and effort into the higher level jobs. And when the entry level jobs are being taken away, how do you even break into the workforce?
Right. That's a great question.
Because
That
that's
is a
where the
great
jobs
question.
really matter. That's where the jobs question really is. It's not
Yeah.
the people at the middle or the top. Yeah, they
Mm-hmm.
got to worry, but they at least have an opportunity to at least be with the technology or try and get ahead of it. What about the poor
Yeah.
people coming in after the fact that they are competing with AI
Mm-hmm.
in a way that there's no way they could ever even break into the job market? So how are they going to
Yeah.
get the experience that they need to be able
Mm-hmm.
to move up in the company and get ahead? So what
That
does
is
this
true.
create? It creates a massive vacuum at the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
and the way the flow of work goes is that you have a big bubble of people that work for cheap and they work at the lowest level in your company. And
Right.
then of those, a smaller amount works their way up to middle management because they started here and they worked their way up into middle management. And then
Mm-hmm.
of those, the very, very few reach it up to the top. So what occurs is take away that big bubble of that workforce. What's going to happen 5 or 10 years from now? Who's
Yeah.
going to be able to deal with the jobs at the middle management? What's going to do that? And those
Yeah.
are jobs that currently aren't being able to be replaced by AI because they require too much, I'm going to call it historical knowledge of companies. They have the history of the company that they know. And so how can you replace that?
But you know what? I just had a vision. Those entry level positions that are going to be replaced by AI is going to be getting smarter as well.
Oh, yeah.
And those entry level we become mid level, right?
Hmm.
It's just going to
They're going to go
continuously
through the
grow.
same process.
They're
They're going
going
to
to
go
go
through the
through
same
the
process.
same process. Right. The same process. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you right now, start auditing your value, right? Start auditing your value. Look at your current capabilities, right? Identify what you're doing that AI cannot replicate, right? And I mean, you need to do a deep dive on your capabilities and be honest about it, right? I need you to lean into that because AI is coming. It's not coming. I'm sorry. It's here. It's just a matter of time, right? It's just a matter of time. You might have 6 months. You might have 6 months. I'm going to just go out there and say it, right? And then from there, you need to look at the AI capabilities instead of competing underneath it, right? Stop looking at it from a competitive position. People who positioned early on every previous technology disruption did not wait for the headlines to confirm that the terrain was already showing them. They read the terrain first. They read the map. That's the move. Read the map, read the terrain, position accordingly. Move before the compression hits you. Right? Move before it hits you. Now, Sensei, can you tell us about the hardware? Right? We talked about chips earlier. Let's talk about that some more.
Oh, with the hardware? What's happening with the
Yeah,
hardware? Well,
absolutely.
once the infrastructure is built and the hardware is in play, then everything else just follows right along lines with it, right? So it's all about the chips and the processing of the chips. Now, know that we use chips in a certain way right now that are very power intensive, okay? And they
Yeah.
take a lot of power to run them, and they take a lot of water to keep these data centers cool. So there's a lot of environmental impact going on right now with hardware. I believe the next major shift is going to come when that can be fine-tuned. It was like, remember when you had your brick phone that was huge,
Oh yeah.
and then you got a flip phone, you got a
Mm-hmm.
Nokia that
Yeah.
was tiny, that could fit inside your hand instead of the brick? Well,
Mm-hmm.
I believe that the hardware for AI is going to follow the same pattern. They figure
Right.
out how to make it work, and then they start to shrink it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe that the hardware, which is very inefficient right now and takes a lot of space and a lot of power, I believe we're going to start to see within the next year or so, we're going to see that compressing. Once the framework is built, the next thing that occurs is it compresses. So now instead of it taking a city block for a calculator, it now takes one room. From one
Mm-hmm.
room down to one desk down to your hand, from your hand to a microchip to a nano chip. So imagine now that with that type of hardware, now because we've talked about quantum technology, we've also talked about Wi-Fi 6, and I keep
Right.
going back to Wi-Fi 6 because it's going to revolutionize the communication, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore that's the hardware. And once the hardware can more efficiently move this massive traffic, then there's no problem with creating more massive traffic because you already have the hardware that moves it.
Right.
So, so the infrastructure being built is the framework being built now with the upgrading of all of our networks to where all communication right now is running on fiber optic backbones. Nobody's running on copper backbones anymore. They might be at the end stage with copper,
Yeah.
but
Mm-hmm.
everybody's running on fiber.
Right.
And therefore, once you do that, okay, I'm on fiber. Now, if I need
Mm-hmm.
to take the endpoints of the fiber and change out hardware from generation 1 to generation 2, the fiber doesn't change, only the
Right.
hardware at the ends. So
Yeah.
we can go into Gen 2, Gen 3 hardware because
Mm-hmm.
the framework is already there and it's not going to change.
Right.
So that's where it's going to make the transition from, again, from a big brick phone into a Nokia. We're going to make that
Absolutely.
kind of leap in the next couple of
Yep.
years
Absolutely. Those data
because
centers are going to get smaller too. Mm-hmm.
the technology is not on a 5-year plan anymore. We used to base
Yeah.
all technology planning for 5 years. I
Mm-hmm.
really think that the technology plan has shifted away from 5 years. I think we're now down to 3 years.
You think
So every
three? I was
three
thinking
years,
two. Yeah.
well, I'm thinking three right now. Now
Okay.
remember, I'm not saying what's coming in the next year or two because
Right.
look at where they said AGI was going to take 10 years and they said it was
Yeah.
going to take 5 years and now they say it's here.
Yeah.
So take that template of timeline and
Mm-hmm.
apply that to the next thing you look at because don't think that they're mutually exclusive. They're all tied together, and when one piece moves, the other piece moves with it, because they can't move
Absolutely.
without each other. They're like
True.
all the 5 fingers of your hand. The thumb can't move ahead without the rest of the hand. So
Right.
know that the rest of the pieces of the infrastructure are already being built in place, happening, so that it can support the next big move.
Absolutely.
So I believe that once that occurs, which I think it has, we took that 5-year timeline, we moved it down. I believe the next little step is going to move us from 3 years down to 2. And once we hit that, I believe we're going to be in a 1-year mark or less for major changes.
And I agree with you. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. And you know what else? In those points that you just gave, you said something very profound, right? And I want to elaborate on what I see, right? What I see are the patterns, right? And here's what strikes me at the deepest layer of the entire story, right? And I want the Sensei to weigh in on this, because this is where the conversation goes beyond Jensen Huang, right? And Sam Altman. And into something every person in the room can use in every arena they operate in. This is not the first time a technology CEO has declared a milestone has arrived, and the research community said, we're not there yet. An AI winter is over declaration that has happened multiple times across 3 decades. The metaverse is the next internet declaration, collapsed before the infrastructure to support existed.
And that's why it collapsed.
Yep, that's why it collapsed. That pattern is always the same. Commercial interest declares arrival, research community pushes back, reality lands somewhere in the middle. And the people who positioned during the declaration and not after the resolution captured most of the value. You see the pattern.
Same pattern.
Structural pattern underneath all those cycles, right? The people with the most honest picture of what technology can actually do have no mechanism to enforce their definition against the people who control the narrative and the distribution or the money. The researchers are right about the capability gap. The CEOs are winning the narrative war, and the narrative is what moves money and policy and careers.
And they all tie together.
All tied together.
They all tie together.
Yep.
And if you put one ahead of itself, when Meta tried that big move, it wasn't ready. The systems, the rest of the systems weren't ready. It wasn't balanced. And because it wasn't balanced, it fell on its face. Perfect example.
Perfect example.
The system will move when it's balanced and ready to move. By the time it's balanced and ready to move, all of the key parties and key players are going to be synchronized and in lockstep. And that's a key word, lockstep.
Yep.
Remember that word. When you see lockstep, that means everybody has the same exact message. If they're not synchronized, it's not ready to move forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, that principle extends well past AI, right? It extends into every market, every industry, every career decision. Every time someone with massive distribution declares a milestone is a trend or a shift, we over here at the Final Bosses, we ask first, what do they gain from me believing this point right now? Right? That's 360-degree thinking. The question alone separates the sovereign from the spectator in the arena area, right? And that goes for every area in every arena, right? So we're about to close. And here's a verdict, not a summary, a verdict, clean and direct, right? Jensen Huang made a move on March 22nd, 2026 that was commercially brilliant and technically indefensible. He accepted someone else's definition of the most important word in technology and said yes inside that definition. And let the press run the headline. And it did. The enterprise procurement cycle accelerated. NVIDIA's narrative strengthened. The actual state of AI capability did not change by a single benchmark point because of full words on a podcast. Sam Altman ran the same play weeks earlier with the theoretical escape routine that was already prepared. He declared AGI basically achieved, then called it a spiritual, right? And when the pressure came, the move served evaluation. The walk back protected the contract. Both outcomes were achieved simultaneously. Both of these plays tell you the same thing at core. AGI race is not just a research race, it's a narrative race, a legal race, a financial race. And the people with the most rigorous, honest picture of what actually exists have the least power to shape what the world believes about it. Whoever sells the most chips to define the milestone. That is the sentence of this entire episode right here. That sentence is complete story compressed into 11 words. Sensei.
I mean, look, the final boss is never waiting for the official announcement. By the time the consensus forms, the positions have been already taken. You studied the terrain, you made the move, the announcement just confirmed what you already knew. You already knew.
Already knew, people. Already knew.
And I like to say this. We are not here. We are here to study the machine.
Yeah.
Not to argue with the decorations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in this community, we don't let someone else's definitions create our milestones. Not in business, not in life, not in the most consequential technology debate of our generation. We're not doing that. You define your benchmark, right? Your measure, right? How you move. That's rebirth in action. Not waiting to be told when intelligence arrived, but knowing for yourself what intelligence means and building from that clarity every single day of your life. Sensei, can you close us out?
Look, tonight is not an episode about whether AGI exists. That's not it. Tonight was an episode about who holds the power to say so and what they gain from saying it. Every final boss in this room just got a graduate level class in narrative control and commercial positioning, and also strategic declaration. Apply it everywhere, not just in tech, but in every area where someone else is trying to tell you what milestone you're at and what you're allowed to believe is possible. Know your terrain, set your own benchmark, execute.
Execute. Right.
And I will be seeing you next week.
That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, the Sensei. Listen, to my smarts, to my final boss, to my motivators, to my warriors, you are the sovereign, right? You are the sovereign. And the AGI debate is not over. We're going to continue to be talking about this, right? The definition war is not resolved. The contracts are still being negotiated. The final boss does not need the debate settled before the move. The final boss moves with clarity in the middle of ambiguity, right? That is the separator between the sovereign and the spectator. I am the final boss. He is the Sensei. This is season 4 of the Rebirth, Arc 3, episode 218, and we are done, right? If this information resonated with you, please share it out with at least 3 people, right? Go like, share, subscribe. Like, share, subscribe. Your network is watching this story unfold without the complete picture. We gave it to them. That is what the community is built for, right? Drop a fire emoji if it resonated with you, right? Drop a fire emoji right now. And understand this. Final bosses never lose. Final bosses never lose. That's why we're the final boss. Through honor, excellence, and execution, we are here. I am here. This is our show. And to each and every last single one of you, no matter where you're watching, good morning, good afternoon,
good evening, and good night.
Yes, sir. That is our show. Thank you for tuning in. And always remember, there's a heavy pain that comes with discipline, but the pain of regret is even heavier. Remember that. Be balanced, be equal, be smart. That is our show. Until next time. Oh, I'll see you guys tomorrow at 9 p.m. for Merger Wednesdays. But that is our show, man. Y'all have a great night. Thank you for tuning in. Go like, share, subscribe, and send the information out. Don't gatekeep. Thank you. Don't gatekeep people. See, Sensei, don't you go to where?
They thought it was over. They thought the fire burned out. But fire doesn't destroy the chosen. It forges them. Hosted by Turbo, the CEO. New energy, new strategy. Every setback builds strength. Every loss builds strategy. And every leader rises again. The rebirth begins. Season 4. Bigger conversations. Real strategy. Power moves only. Monday motivation. Tech Tuesday. Merger Wednesday. Special guest Thursdays, sit down Sundays. Season 4 starts now. Tap in or get left behind. Because bosses don't wait, they lead.